As I walked through the threshold, probably about 2-3 feet, that's when I saw him standing there. The apparition was just suspended somewhat into the air, directly in front of the window.
I got up, 6 o'clock in the morning, and I just walked out of the bedroom towards the kitchen. And I saw a shadow go right across on the wall. I figured, whatever it is, it's something paranormal, and it's...
And he got into industrial sales, basically, and what that would require of him was traveling quite sufficiently. In most cases, he would leave Monday morning, and we would see him Friday evening when he would return. My father, you know, when he had started, he sat me down as a young child at 6 years old, said, you know, you're the man of the house, Nick, when I'm not here, and I did. I took that very seriously, and it did incense in me a sense of responsibility, I guess you could say, where I would keep an eye on my brother or sister, you know, try to guide them in whichever ways that I possibly could, and to make sure that everybody in the house is safe.
At various times in our lives, we've all felt vulnerable. Strong, disturbing emotions hijack our lives. Could these feelings be so powerful they open the door to the supernatural world? Hello, I'm Lawrence Chow. Today in Ghostly Encounters, we meet Nick and Christina. They both had periods of being vulnerable, and they both believe this made them more open to the paranormal. Growing up in St. John, Nick LeBlanc assumes the responsibility of looking after his family. It's a heavy load for a young boy to carry, and Nick doesn't expect a ghost will help him with it.
When I got to the age of about, I'd say probably about 10, maybe 11-ish, there was one night, it was roughly around 2:30 in the morning, I was laying in my bed reading a book. And in the beginning, I would hear noises and footsteps and shuffling and whatnot in the attic area above my bedroom. You could clearly hear the heel and the toe, ta-ta, ta-ta, as if it was a foot, you know, being laid down and walking like, you know, most human beings do. Originally, you know, at that young age, I thought, okay, because I knew my mom hid all of her Christmas presents and birthday presents and whatnot up in the attic. But then I started thinking about it, and I realized there's no way that my mom is walking around in the attic at 2 o'clock in the morning. It just doesn't make logical sense. It was somewhat scary. You know, because you're hearing these footsteps, and especially as a young child, you have no explanation for them. You know, your imagination does start getting the better of you sometimes. At the time, my aspirations were to be a police officer. So I told myself, well, if you're going to be a cop, you got to get the courage, you know, you can't back down. So I grabbed my flashlight and headed down the hallway. And so then I proceeded up the stairs of the attic. The apprehension and the fear started coming, and I do remember I was shaking a little bit. I mean, I was a 10-year-old kid at 2 o'clock in the morning walking into a dark attic by himself. And I walked into the first room, and it was as I walked through the threshold, probably about 2-3 feet, that's when I saw him standing there. The apparition was just suspended somewhat into the air, directly in front of the window. My first initial thought was just dust in the moonlight. And until I blinked a couple of times and I really looked at it carefully. And then that's at the point where the apparition turned. And as he was turning, then I could very, very clearly and distinguishably see the facial features. He had white hair, white beard. The white hair on his head was very, very curly. You know, obviously I was shocked. And we looked at each other dead in the eye, and no sooner that I see him, I felt an overwhelming sense of calm. The entity, you know, he was standing there, and I kind of blinked, and as I blinked, I saw his head kind of turning away, and I blinked again, and he was gone. And I checked everywhere. couldn't see anything, so I went back down into my bedroom, and I laid awake in my bed. I don't think I slept very much that night, and just you know, trying to wrap my head around it. I think that's when it really hit me that you weren't dreaming. You were physically walking, you know, like you're awake right now, and okay, what in the world did I just see? You know, and yeah, it took me a little while before it clicked in that, you know, geez, that might have actually been a ghost. In the beginning, yes, absolutely, I was scared. But it's as I saw his face and we made eye contact, it was just this sense of ease or this sense of calm or of this self-realization that he's not going to harm you. There's nothing malevolent here. He just wants you to know that he's here. And in a sense, offering that hand of, you know, this is my home, and I will look over my home, but I will look over you as well. And I felt almost like he intentionally emitted that energy or that sense of calm to me, to know that I didn't have to run, I didn't have to be afraid, you know, I don't have to fear living or sleeping in my own home. And it was just very, very comforting. About a week and a half later, I was outside playing soccer in the front yard. And I just happened to look up to my left, up into the top of the attic window. And the gentleman is standing there physically looking down at me. And, you know, I froze. And, you know, in that quick second in my mind of computing of, okay, no, you're actually seeing him there. And that's when I just took off running. Ran straight upstairs into the house, up in the attic to try to, you know, to see if he was there. And much to my dismay, there was nothing. I walked around. I even, you know, I said, I saw you, you know, show me. I know I saw you one time. Why can't I see you again? And never, ever gotten a response or anything like that. So that was basically my story. It was, like I said, it was quite shocking, very, very surprising. But once again, I felt no fear. There was no apprehension. As time went on, I did get the feeling that he did present himself to me for the reasons of me being such a young child and, in a sense, you know, being the man of the house. That was a lot of responsibility, especially at a young age. And I always just felt like he was looking down on me. He was just, you know, letting me know, you know what, you're young. It's going to be better. It'll be okay. Because any time that I would have, you know, strong emotions or something, or if I was in my bedroom and I was crying or you know, something had happened, those would be the times that I would hear the footsteps. And it almost seemed like it would correlate itself with my, you know, my times of need, I guess you could say. My mom would always joke because she thought I would be talking in my sleep, but I would be sitting up in my bed and I would be talking to my ceiling. Just because I knew myself, I could feel and I sensed he was there, he was listening. I mean, there's probably things that I told him that I've never told anybody. And it's hard to say that I knew, but I could feel, I knew, you know, I was not alone in my situation. There was somebody else there that was listening, and, you know, that and I'm sure if he could have, he would have helped me in any way that I would have needed it, if he could have. Until the day I was 16 and I moved out of the house, driving out the final time he was in that window, and that was the time that he actually had his hand on the glass. It still almost kind of breaks my heart to think back on it because, you know, the look on his face and with his hand on the window was almost like, it's kind of like a plea of, you know, no, don't go type of thing. Almost in that aspect. And I do remember the waterworks, the tears started up even more at that point, you know, because, you know, all the emotions and everything built up. And yeah, I've always wondered if it wasn't, you know, a final goodbye for both of us, and for him to, you know, finally be able to say, you know, I've done what I needed to do. You know, I helped this young man, you know, basically, I've helped him keep his life on track and guided him in the proper directions.
Nick believes the ghost he saw helps him deal with the stress of growing up and looking after his family. But Christina Parker tells us her ghost wants only one thing: to terrify her.
I was always a downtown kind of girl and loved the city lights and enjoyed living downtown. And when I got married, my husband became a real estate agent, and he was looking at a house out in what I would call the country, but basically it's the suburbs of Halifax. And I went out with him to check it out, and I thought, oh my gosh, this is a lovely house. And we decided to buy it. And it was a huge transition for me. I felt a little cut off because we didn't know anybody there, and a couple of the views from our house, you can't see anything but pitch black because there weren't any other homes there at the time. So I was feeling quite isolated and thinking, oh my gosh, what have we done, you know? Here we are in the middle of nowhere, and my husband was working a lot of hours, and it was just too lonely, and I felt too cut off, and I was really starting to regret having moved out there. After we bought the house, we decided we were going to move in breakables, and we thought we would store them in the upstairs storage attic. And I thought it was probably just my imagination playing tricks on me, but I felt that when I went into that area that something was watching me. Before we moved into the house, we moved in some of our breakables. I just didn't want them going in with everything else in the mishmash and possibly getting broken. So we decided we would move some breakables in piece by piece, and we thought we would store them in the upstairs storage attic. And I used to think, I just felt that somebody was watching me. Well, you know, come on, it's an attic, and you look at the horror stories, it's always in the attic and in the loft, and so I thought, oh, it's probably just my imagination. So we moved in May, and my husband wasn't doing terribly well in real estate, and he had to take a second job, and so he took a security job, which took him away most evenings. And here I was, stuck out in the middle of the country that I felt that I was. No car, and I was just starting to feel a little down, missed the city lights, missed the partying, and kind of thought, what have we done? Where are we? And I didn't really like being stuck out there. Then one Sunday afternoon, I was feeling kind of drowsy, so I thought I would just go upstairs and have a nap. So I went upstairs to the loft area because it was just a section of the house that I really didn't use a lot. Suddenly, the door to the storage area in the loft just opened. And I thought, well, better get up and close it before one of the cats gets in there. I don't want to lose track of them, and went back, lie down. And then the door opened again. Okay, got up, closed it, made sure I pushed it to, and I heard the click before I walked away. Sure enough, the door opens wide open again. At this point, I started to get a little rattled because this was firmly closed, and unless somebody turned the handle, I cannot see how that door opened. I can't explain that. So I got up again, closed the door. This time I put a chair against it because I'm thinking, you're going to stay shut. I started to feel that something must be doing it. It just started to seem a little strange that suddenly I'm lying there and the door opens 3 times, its own volition. I didn't want to go into that loft area, like behind the door that had opened. I just felt that I probably shouldn't be going in there. So told my husband about it when he got home, and he said, well, we better go and get a bolt and put across the door. And my husband installed it on the Tuesday night. On the Wednesday evening, he had a security job, and it was about 10 o'clock in the evening, and I was typing something downstairs. And suddenly I heard something knocking very loudly, and it sounded to me as though it was coming from that attic door. I thought maybe it's somebody knocking on the door, the front door, the back door. I'll go and have a look, see what somebody wants, but I'm pretty sure it came from upstairs. So I went and I had a look, and there was nobody standing at any of the doors. So it left me a little scared because I just thought, whatever it was is upstairs. It's really ticked off that we put a bolt on the door, and it was letting us know how it felt. And I was absolutely scared to death. I called my husband at the security job and told him what had happened, and he said, well, you're sure it's nobody that went to the front door? I said, no, I checked it. So he said, well, you know, there's nothing I can do. I'm here at work. And I said, well, at least stay on the line with me. So he said, okay, I'll do that. And I stayed on the phone with him for 2 hours. I was just so scared. I needed that line of communication. And again, all I could think of was, there's something in there, some sort of entity or spirit, and it is so mad at me for putting on that bolt. It's probably playing with me too, but it's just making a point. Here I was, moved into a house. You can't get rid of a house that easily. It takes a while to sell, and I'm thinking, that's it, we have to move, we have a ghost in the house. But had to be a little more rational and logical and think, okay, how am I gonna deal with this? So, a few days went by, and I got up at 6 o'clock in the morning, and I just walked out of the bedroom towards the kitchen. And I saw a shadow go right across on the wall. I got up at 6 o'clock in the morning, and I just walked out of the bedroom towards the kitchen. A shadow go right across on the wall. And my first thought was, oh my God, somebody's in the house. I stopped dead in my tracks. And at first I thought, do I move? Do I say anything now? Because, you know, I've never been faced with having an intruder before. And I just stopped dead in my tracks and watched this shadow go slowly across. And as soon as it had disappeared, I spun around and ran back into the bedroom and woke up my husband. And then I started thinking to myself, this doesn't make sense. If somebody was in the house, I would have heard them because the floorboards are so creaky, but I heard nothing. The only thing was my visual, but there was no person in the house. We looked. So what was it? I figured whatever it is, it's something paranormal, and it's upping the ante. That was the peak of me being frightened. I said, you know, we really have to do something about this because I can't stay alone in this house. And just after that happened, that very weekend, my husband quit his security job, and we went and adopted a dog. And from that moment, every activity came to an abrupt halt. I do believe that there are malevolent spirits that kind of float around and are just waiting to hone in on somebody that is feeling depressed. And I think they kind of play games, and I'm pretty sure that that's what this was. And I let it.
Doors play an important role in Christina's story. Our experts tell us that throughout history, some people have viewed doors as portals for the coming and going of spirits. In both stories, the ghosts seem to spend most of their time in attics, which are classic settings for ghostly encounters because they are usually abandoned and isolated, the perfect place for a ghost to retreat to and avoid human contact. Nick and Christina's ghosts both appeared during difficult times, but their appearance led to things getting better for both our subjects. Nick got the father figure he needed. Christina's husband quit his job, and she didn't feel alone anymore.
It gave me that kind of a positive outlook on, and it allowed me to go out into society and be more social, and also to be more open-minded and more understanding and considerate of other people, I think. And I think that majorly impacted me in my life, because it made me realize that those little subtle little things sometimes can make a world of difference to the right person.
It's just another insight to another thing that's out there that we have no way to measure. We have no way to document it or to prove it. It's just one of those things that has happened, and I think we should understand that there are things out there that we just can't explain, and just be on your guard. Don't let your guard down, and don't take things for granted, and just be vigilant always.
I went to get my clothes wearing nothing but a towel, and I turned into the motel room, and the man in black was sitting on the bed, and he turned and looked at me.
I mentioned it to her, told her if she was feeling like we were being watched, and she just casually replied, "That's Fred." So I kind of laughed it off, and I was like, "Right, Fred, if you're here, give me a sign," and with a couple chuckles. Following that, I could feel a sensation of someone kind of choking me from behind.
I'm not sure how I feel about everything now. There's still such a big part of me that wants to explain it away as something else, as some sort of hallucination or nightmare. But I know what I've seen, and I know it was real. I don't know if he is good or bad. I don't know if he's a ghost or a demon. All I know is I don't want him to be around anymore. And he really does scare me.
Being a teenager can be tough. You're trying to figure out who you are, and emotions run high. These feelings can cause anxiety and confusion, but can they attract a ghost? Today in Ghostly Encounters, we meet Caitlin and Steve, who both say they were targeted by ghosts in their teenage years. Growing up in Ottawa, Caitlin Clark moved from place to place with very few constants in her life. But one thing that did remain constant was a terrifying ghost.
When things first started, my parents had just gotten divorced, and my mom and my sister and I had just moved into this tiny little house. I think we were still unpacking, and it was very late. And she and my younger sister went up to bed, and I'd fallen asleep on the couch. My mom had just decided that she'd leave me there. Best not move me, I guess. I remember feeling like there was someone there in the room, and I couldn't tell who it was. I didn't want to open my eyes. But I'm always a bit curious, so I did. And there was a man standing over top of me, just barely far enough away that he wasn't touching me. I was so scared. I wanted to run away. And he disappeared. He was just there one instant and gone the next. I told my mom what had happened, and she said that there was no possible way that I had seen a ghost, that it must have been a nightmare, it must have been a bad dream. I hadn't seen it properly. And so I believed her. I didn't want to think that our new house was haunted. I didn't want to think I had seen something so scary. I would have heard him. I would have heard or felt something. He wasn't anyone I recognized. I knew it wasn't my dad. And he didn't seem right to me. He doesn't feel like he's part of this world. Now I'm studying art, and I'm learning about where the shadows should be from the light sources. and there just seems to be so much more shadow on him. It's like he's part of the shadows. I should have been able to see his eyes. You can always tell a person by their eyes. And it bothered me a lot that that was something that I couldn't see. It made him seem very inhuman. I've never really known what to call him, and so I just tend to call him the Man in Black, because that's what he is. He's a man in a black suit. And for a long time, I really wanted to think that it was just a nightmare, that something like that couldn't really happen. But that wasn't the last time that I saw him. Very soon after that, we were evicted. And my sister, my mom, my stepdad, and I all ended up being forced into this tiny, horrible little 2-bedroom apartment. And we were just getting settled down. And my dog got sick. And we ended up having to put my dog to sleep. He'd come in and check on everyone every night, and I loved him. I love dogs, and he was my first dog. And I was asleep in my room, and I felt someone watching me. And I do believe in ghosts, so part of me sort of wanted to think that maybe it was my dog's spirit. So I looked up, and the Man in Black was standing in my doorway. I was asleep in my room, and I felt like someone was watching me. And this part of me really wanted to think that it was my dog, and it was a spirit coming to check on me. So I looked up, and the Man in Black was standing in my doorway, just standing there. And I didn't want to move, and he just stood there, and then he was gone. I've never really seen him walk away. I've never seen him walk towards me. He just disappears. And that's not normal. He wasn't there for very long, but it also seems like he's there for a long time, because I can tell all the details. He was wearing a full black suit, just unbelievably black, and a black hat, but I still couldn't see his eyes. He doesn't move, he doesn't fidget, he doesn't walk or say anything or move his lips or anything. And if he was a real person, he would have had to have gotten past my parents sleeping in the living room, but no one else was awake. No one else knew what was going on. After that, I hadn't seen him for a long time. And things were actually going fairly well. We ended up moving out of that apartment into a nice big 3-bedroom apartment, central air, all that jazz. And I was getting ready to start school, but we ended up getting evicted again. Things just, they weren't going well. And I ended up staying in a motel. And there was one night where my mom and my sister had went to the grocery store, and I went for a shower. I had forgotten all my clothes inside the motel room. I went to get my clothes wearing nothing but a towel, and I turned into the motel room, and he was sitting on the bed, and he turned and looked at me. I ran back into the bathroom and locked the door, just panicked. I kept trying to think, like, how could somebody have gotten in here? What am I gonna do? I don't have my cell phone. I can't call my mom. I can't do anything. Should I call for help? Because I would have had to have passed him to get out of the room. So I just waited for my mom and sister to come back. And they actually really scared me when they got back, because they knocked on the door and I had to get up and go and unlock the chain. And so I knew that I was right, that there had been something else in the room, and I know it was him. And I know he was there because of me. I didn't think that I'd see him because I wasn't in a home. And I know it's really stupid to sort of think that way, but I didn't really think that he'd be able to find me. I really didn't think that I had to worry about him at all. After it happened in the motel, I really started associating him with bad things. I started looking back and thinking back at the other times that I had seen him, and that's when it sort of connected, that he really comes around when I'm at my most vulnerable and when a lot of bad things are going on in my life. I was definitely a daddy's girl when I was younger. I always wanted to be around my dad, and all of a sudden he was gone, and I really felt like I had been abandoned by him. And I hate to say this, but I really think that I was also angry with my mother. We weren't with my dad anymore, and we had to change towns, and I had to move away from everything that I knew. My world had turned completely upside down, and maybe that's why he showed up. Maybe he was taking advantage of that. I really don't know what to think about him anymore. You sort of get an idea in your head that some things are bad and some things are good. And I really thought for a long time that he was something bad, but I don't think that it's that cut and dry. He may be just something that's there, something that's part of my life that I have to get used to.
Caitlin says the man in black appeared whenever something bad happened. Expert Patty Allen suggests her vulnerable state acted like a beacon to attract the ghost, and her vulnerability made him seem evil. Steve Chartier, also from Ottawa, sent a signal to the ghostly realm as well. His signal was mocking and comic, but it was returned with real hostility.
The first time I went to the house in question, I was seeing this girl, and from the very first times I was at her house, I could sense kind of a weird sensation of being watched. You could always feel like there'd be someone in the basement there, even though you couldn't see anyone. I never thought really much of it until the first incident with Fred. The first time I went to the house in question, I was seeing this girl, and from the very first times I was at her house, I could sense kind of a weird sensation of being watched. You could always feel like there'd be someone in the basement there, even though you couldn't see anyone. I never thought really much of it until the first incident with Fred. One day, I believe it was sometime in November, we were just sitting, me and my girlfriend at the time, were sitting in her room in the basement watching TV. And I just got that same sensation that I would get most times I was at the house. I mentioned it to her, told her if she was feeling like we were being watched, and she just casually replied, "That's Fred." And I asked her, "Who's Fred?" And she told me they're a story of an old couple that used to live in the house before her family moved in. had a son that supposedly committed suicide in the basement. So I kind of laughed it off, and I was like, right, Fred, if you're here, give me a sign, and a couple chuckles. And right away, the TV just flickered off and on. Following that, I could feel a sensation of someone kind of choking me from behind, like trying to squeeze their hands around my neck. I really couldn't feel like fingers, or it was just like a pressure that was pushing down on me. And to me, it just felt like something was trying to tell me that I'm here and you better believe it. At that point, I mean, for as much as I had read about ghosts or whatnot, I didn't know what I was dealing with. It did startle me to the point where I did turn around to see if there was anything behind me at all. I was almost half expecting to see something. And I just turned around and I could see the back window fogging up, as if someone was exhaling onto it. Oh, I was pretty scared for a few minutes and few days after that. I mean, it stayed with me for a long time. It's definitely a shock like nothing else I've ever experienced. I think in a way I probably did entice Fred by mentioning, because I do remember I was laughing. It seemed to me like something was trying to prove that it was there and just wipe the smile off my face. I was sitting in the basement. The same girl and her sister was upstairs, and she started like shouting hysterically, like telling us someone was in the house. And then she said she couldn't open the door. So we ran upstairs, and all the lights were off, and I went right up to the door, and I tried to open the door, and I couldn't even get the handle to turn or anything. It was as if something was trying to keep us inside the house or prevent us from leaving. And during that whole time, it was just a weird, negative, malicious energy. And just standing there, I could definitely feel cold masses of air shifting. I just kind of saw something move, so I turned around and I just saw a black silhouette standing in the doorway. It looked kind of like a person, but it was really hard to tell. It wasn't very defined, and it was just standing there. I don't think it was moving. I mean, there weren't eyes or anything, so it just seemed like we were being blocked from the hallway and being locked inside the house. Right then, it just seemed to just end. My mind was just racing. I was wondering, just trying to keep track of what was going on, and everything kind of just, that extra pressure in the room just kind of left. And that's when we tried to open the door again, and it did open. It just felt like a big sense of relief. But I recall leaving the house not shortly after. Definitely was uncomfortable staying in the house after those couple incidences, for sure. It was a lot stronger than the first incident, and I can't see what might have antagonized Fred to lock us in the house. I mean, even if it's a prank, it's not a very funny one. It's definitely some type of energy, and I mean, a suicide, for example, definitely would have to come from a very troubled place. So definitely probably a lot of feelings of anger or just despair. And I think Fred, I mean, if he took his own life, as the story goes, I could definitely see him not being at peace and still wandering in his old house that he used to live in.
Our experts think Steve's explanation is on the right track. Earthbound ghosts are no different in death than they were in life. People who died with strong emotions may be emotionally volatile after death, especially in response to an arrogant teen. Both Caitlin and Steve experienced something out of the ordinary, but they've come to terms with it, and the world has become a greater and more complicated place.
From that moment on, I definitely converted from the non-believer to the believer. And that's why I always told my friends is it would have to happen to them for them to believe. And that's the way I see it, is it has to happen to you for you to believe it.
Most people, they don't want to think that something like that can be out there. And most people, they don't think it's out there. But it is. And you kind of have to come to terms with it, I guess.